This is the COVID quarantine in the Philippines. Construction sites are closed. The street is clear except for a delivery service. The future is an educated guess. In this video, I am going to talk about retrenchment under Philippine law. I'll start by saying that no one wants the disruption that retrenchment brings. It means many people losing their jobs and the shuttering of businesses. It means a bad situation becoming worse for those who become unemployed. But the government itself has acknowledged the need to prepare for the worst case. As early as March 12, the Social Security system announced that it was ready to pay unemployment benefits to some 30,000 to 60,000 workers, expected to be affected by COVID-induced layoffs and closures. Retrenchments were expected mostly in the travel, tourism, and hospitality industries, and to some extent in the manufacturing sector. But these cascade into more retrenchments by other businesses. As large companies reduce their outputs, their suppliers find themselves without their main customers. The suppliers fall in a domino effect. Hotels that service these businesses, restaurants, transport, logistics, catering, and other suppliers are bleeding. Industries stagger under the pressure, and the fact is that retrenchments are inevitable for many of these businesses. For many, but at least not for all. Commenting on this crisis, my former labor law professor has written that it is not only our government that is called upon to respond effectively, decisively, and appropriately to address the emergency situation. The private sector is also expected to do its share. Professor Dawai goes on to say that it is incumbent on big business to do its share for their workers, to see them at this critical time as partners who need all the help they can get to survive the pandemic. That sense of shared sacrifice will eventually redound to the greater good of the country and help promote a more equitable society for all. Meanwhile, the Department of Labor has appealed to companies to take the extra mile in assisting their workers during this crisis situation. The Secretary of Labor has asked employers not to retrench employees amid the work stoppages, given the suspension of public transport and the restricted movement of people. He asked employers to find other ways to preserve employment of workers, so as not to compound their already dire condition. Business has had to respond in different ways. Some businesses have implemented the flexible work arrangements recommended by the Department of Labor. These include telecommuting, work from home, reduced hours, rotating work among employees. Some, with the reserves for it, have announced full payment to employees even during the quarantine period, along with advance payment of 13th month pay. Many have suspended work and pay during the quarantine. Work suspension. With regard to work suspension, the legal guidelines for this under COVID are found in a DOLE advisory issued on January 13 this year. Labor Advisory Number 1 for 2020 confirms that work suspension is a management prerogative to suspend work to ensure the safety and health of their employees during natural or man-made calamity. During work suspension, the principles are no work, no pay, unless there is a favorable company policy, practice, or collective bargaining agreement granting payment of wages during the suspended period. When the employee has accrued leave credits, she may be allowed to use this leave so that she will have pay on the suspended days. On the other hand, if the employee worked during the suspended period, no additional pay need be given to him other than their salary. But to alleviate the plight of employees in this time of calamity, the employers may provide extra incentives or benefits to employees who reported to work. The Labor Advisory also rules that employees who fail or refuse to work because of imminent danger from this calamity shall not be exposed to or subject to any administrative sanction. Having said that, if work from home, flexible arrangements, or work suspension are not sustainable, businesses may look at the numbers and find that retrenchment has to be resorted to. Retrenchment. What is retrenchment? Legally, retrenchment is an authorized cause for the employer's dismissal of employees because of losses in the operation of a business, lack of work, and considerable reduction in the volume of business. Substantively, retrenchment can be resorted to if 1. The losses are substantial, 2. The losses are actual or reasonably imminent, 3. The retrenchment is reasonably necessary and is likely to be effective in preventing the expected losses, and 4. The losses are proven by sufficient and convincing evidence. The employer must retrench in good faith. The company must use fair and reasonable criteria for which employees will be retrenched and which employees will be retained. Procedurally, retrenchment requires that the employer serves written notice both to the employees and to the dole at least 1 month before the effectivity of retrenchment, that the employer pays the retrenched employee the legal separation pay in an amount prescribed by the Labor Code, that the written notice to the dole is done by filling out the form they have for this purpose and presenting documentation or further proof as may be asked for. Essentially, I'd suggest that the notice to dole as well as the notice to the retrenched employees should give enough information to inform them of how the substantive requirements are being complied with. The written notices ought to demonstrate substantial business losses. They ought to note that the company will pay the proper separation pay, that the retrenchment scheme was arrived at in good faith, and lastly, that the criteria used in selecting the employees to be retrenched passes the test of fairness and reasonableness. Separation pay. With regard to the separation pay, under retrenchment, an employee is entitled to receive a separation pay equivalent to 1/2 month pay for every year of service. Services of at least 6 months is considered as 1 whole year. Retrenchment and redundancy. It should be noted that retrenchment and redundancy are similar grounds. Both are authorized causes for an employer's dismissal of employees, but they are distinct from each other. Redundancy is when the services of an employee are in excess of what is needed. It can occur even when the business is doing well, if labor is in excess of what the company requires. Retrenchment contemplates losses in the operation of the business. Another practical distinction is that the separation pay awarded to employees is different under either ground. Under redundancy, separation pay is equivalent to the employee's 1 month's pay for every year of service. Under retrenchment, it is equivalent to 1/2 month's pay for every year of service. Essentially, a redundant employee would be entitled to double the separation pay of a retrenched employee. Thus, aside from the purely legal distinction, the financial and economic effects are different. Given the environment created by COVID, retrenchment will be the ground most reeling industries will resort to if indeed they must let employees go. Thank you for watching. For more videos, you can watch us on this channel. For more content and online consultations, you can find us on lawyerphilippines.org.